Dr. Lawrence Jaisraj, consultant, interventional cardiologist and electrophysiologist, KMCH Coimbatore. Dr. Lawrence Jaisraj has completed his DM cardiology from the prestigious Institute of Cardiovascular Sciences at Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education and Research, Kolkata. He has completed his certification with International Board of Heart Rhythm Examiners USA in Devices and Electrophysiology, Certified Cardiac Device Specialist, and Certified Electrophysiology Specialist. He got his advanced CRT training for heart failure from Niguarda General Hospital, Milan, Italy. He has done observership in complex arrhythmia ablation from Veterans General Hospital, Taiwan, and St. Luke Medical Center, USA. Dr. Lawrence Jaisraj has a good number of publications in reputed international and national journals. He has contributed 2 chapters as a first author in a textbook on ventricular tachycardia ablation. We heartily welcome you, sir.
My topic for discussion will be little different from what we had so far, little on basic side. I'm going to talk on 2 topics today, both related to heart failure. I kept my topics little to the simpler and basic side. First one will be on cardiac remodeling. I think we had a lot of talks from yesterday to today morning on arrhythmias and heart failure and ischemic heart disease. We know very well whenever we have an acute insult to cardiac function, may it be a myocarditis, may it be a myocardial infarction, or any form of myocardial insult, ultimately heart responds to that by remodeling itself. May it be a hypertension long-standing, may it be an aortic stenosis long-standing, you can have a positive remodeling of heart. It responds to it by hypertrophy or dilatation. Over a period of time, this helps heart in functioning in a proper way. You develop a remodeling by multiple inputs. You develop a hypertrophy or a dilatation. You tend to keep your cardiac function intact in the early part of this modification. When the insult continues for a longer period of time, you have a patient with LV dysfunction who continues to be in LV dysfunction a period of time. All these responses can become maladaptive. You can have an overactivation of a neurohormonal system. Ultimately, you will end up in having a deleterious remodeling, which we call as a negative remodeling, and ultimately results in an inappropriate remodeling and progressive aggravation of LV function. Whatever initially helped you in keeping your ventricular activity intact or ventricular function intact, over a period of time becomes inappropriate and malfunctional. So you ultimately end up in a more heart failure. So the heart failure related triggers which helped you in the early part will become maladaptive. So what happens particularly in the heart failure with reduced ejection fraction? So whenever you have a heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, it's a condition of a volume overload. You have more blood staying in the heart at the end of a systole. After end of each systole, the amount of blood which is going to stay inside the heart increases. That means your end diastolic volumes are higher. End systolic volumes are higher. You have more blood inside the body. So it results in thinning of LV walls, decreased systolic function, enlarged LV volume. Over a period of time, it leads to a increased diastolic pressure, increased diastolic wall stress, and series of addition of new sacromeres and chamber enlargement, eccentric hypertrophy, ultimately leads into a left ventricular volume overload, which affects the LV function further. So myocardial infarction, as we know, when the first infarct happens, there is a area of infarct which ultimately thins out, elongates, and to compensate for the area which has been lost due to myocardial infarction, there is a compensatory hypertrophy of the rest of the areas, a compensatory dilatation. In the early part of myocardial infarction, it may be of help because it reduces your diastolic wall stress. You have more place to hold the blood which has been started accumulating, but over a period of time, it becomes a maladaptive. Ultimately, you develop a scar and myocyte hypertrophy, and all these end up in a remodeling. So how you look at this remodeling? So this is a very important concept. I see whenever when we do an echocardiogram, I always say when there is a patient who presents with heart failure, one of the most important thing you have to look at is volumes. See, not only concentrate on ejection fraction, always concentrate on your volumes, because in the early part of remodeling, your ejection fraction may not be changing too much, but your volumes will be changing. There will be a progressive dilatation. Always keep a watch on your left ventricular end diastolic diameters and volumes. So these are very important to you to see what is happening to the heart. If you are treating the remodeling, then it gives you information how much successful you are. Otherwise, if the patient is not responding to a treatment, you know very well this patient is not responding to your medications, whatever you are giving, and patient is going for a progressive remodeling. And you know very well the moment you dilate the heart, there is a dilatation of your left ventricle, there is maladaptation of malcoaptation of your mitral valves and develop a central mitral valvular jet. And this central mitral valvular jets can ultimately add on to the volume of blood which is already there in the heart and increase the LV dysfunction. So you have to look at all these in every echo you see. I think whenever you see a patient with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, it is very important for you to look at few things. One, always look at volumes. Look at end-diastolic volume and systolic volume, more than ejection fraction. Look at mitral valve severity and LA volume. I think these are the things which are going to give you an idea about what is happening at the remodeling level at the heart. So why we are very much interested? The risk of cardiovascular events are significantly increased when heart is remodeling. You look at the graph, as you have a more and more remodeled heart, your cardiovascular...
Your slides are not moving.
Okay, sorry. I'll stop and reshare again.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you see that now? Is it moving?
Yeah, we can see now.
Now it is fine.
Now it's in.
It's moving?
Yeah, moving.
Okay. So as this slide shows, you can clearly see there is a significant increase in cardiovascular death, reinfarction, worsening heart failure, stroke, SCD, and cardiovascular overall composite death all increased when your heart remodels. So we know very well that the most important thing in a patient with a heart failure is stopping progression of remodeling. We know, being a cardiologist, one of the most important thing we know in a MI patient, at least I will take an example of a myocardial infarction for an example. You know, a patient presents with a myocardial infarction. In the initial presentation, you have an ejection fraction. You are supposed to look at these ejection fraction changes over a period of time in the next maybe 24 hours, 48 hours for an acute change. Then you look at discharge, ejection fractions and volumes. Then you call back the patient after a month, look at volumes, and you ultimately look at the heart at 3 months interval to see what happened exactly due to the myocardial infarction. This is the timeline in a myocardial infarction. At the presentation, at discharge, at 1 month time, at 3 months time. We know by doing a lot of primary angioplasties how heart behaves to a rapid restoration of a revascularization in a patient with a myocardial infarction. You see a patient with an ejection fraction of 25-30% on admission. He discharges with same amount of ejection fraction, and he comes back at a month with an improved ejection fraction. You might have well noticed there are a good number of patients who have got timely revascularization, completely reversing their LV dysfunction by 3 months' time. That's the reason, if you look at most of the heart failure guidelines, whenever you talk about heart failure device therapy, like ICDs or CRTs, that is always time bound. You are not going to do any ICDs or any CRT on a patient who has got a myocardial infarction for the 3 months of time post revascularization, because that's the time your heart is going to remodel. But that's okay for a myocardial infarction. You had an insult, closed epicardial artery, you opened an epicardial artery, you are waiting for 3 months for your heart to remodel. Along with that, you are adding drugs. But what happens to your heart which is in a dilated cardiomyopathy? You have a patient with dilated cardiomyopathy, heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, where your heart continuously remodeling. Here, you don't have an option of opening a coronary artery and change everything. Here, all of these things depend on what drugs and what is your medical management you are going to give to change this cardiac remodeling process. This is what happens. Every 10 ml increase in end-diastolic volume increases death and heart failure hospitalization by close to 10%. And any increase in end systolic volume more than 10 ml increases death or heart failure hospitalization by 15%. So you are looking at a very big numbers. Whenever you are going to allow your heart to remodel in a bad way, you are going to increase mortality in a very big way. So this is what happens. Your EF drops by 10%. You are increasing your cardiovascular death and chronic heart failure hospitalization by 45% and cardiovascular death by 60%. So if you are, the most important thing in managing a patient with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction is, one, you have to stop this cardiac remodeling. How you are going to stop remodeling? You have drugs with you. You optimize the drug in a such a way that you are able to stop at a particular level your cardiac remodeling so that you don't allow the heart to dilate further or reduce the ejection fraction further. Do we have options to do that? So we have, as I told you, if the patient has a myocardial ischemia, you correct it, you can stop remodeling. In pathophysiological level, I have already elucidated what all happens at the cellular level, which predisposes to remodeling. You have therapeutic options. You have ACE inhibitors, you have ARBs, you have MRAs, beta blockers, and drugs like sacubitril valsartan, and all these drugs have a big effect on ventricular remodeling. And we know one of the biggest advantage what we have in patients with reduced ejection fraction with heart failure, we can put devices like CRTs, which can stop remodeling. Whenever I talk about CRT to my patients, I always say in heart failure, most important thing is stop the remodeling. For the patient point of view, you have to talk about ejection fraction change. If a patient has a LV dysfunction, worsening LV dysfunction, you stop LV dysfunction at the particular level. Your EF is at 30%. If you are able to keep your 30% EF for a period of time, that is a great success from a CRT. Or if you are able to drop the progression of the disease and reverse it, that's wonderful. But if you are able to stop at a particular level itself is a great success in management of patients with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. So what happens, we know why it happens. Initially, all these responses have started to keep your heart running in a proper way. But over a period of time, if any problem with my slides, please let me know. I think it's fine now. Yeah. Hopefully it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
It is fine, sir.
Okay. So most of the time, what happens exactly during your ventricular remodeling is there is an activation of a neurohormonal system, which were all helping you in the early part of your heart failure. You have activated your sympathetic nervous system, you have activated your RAS system, you have activated your neprilysin system. All these systems were working together to help the heart to take care of the heart failure in the early phase. But over a period of time, what happens? All these things become maladaptive. Now, what you have to do? You have to either optimize these neurohormonal activation systems or you have to block them. So that's the reason you ultimately end up giving a RAS blocker, you give a beta blocker, you want a neprilysin inhibition. All these are in place so that you can have a control over ventricular remodeling. So we have a lot of drugs. As I told you, there are drugs which have been proven benefit in ventricular remodeling. We know about beta blockers, we know about ACE and ARBs, and we know very well about what it happens with MRAs. They are endothelin activation blockers, and all this does very good effect on this remodeling. But we have a new kid on the block, the ARNI. The angiotensin receptor blocker, neprilysin inhibition has shown a lot of promise in a lot of areas in management of heart failure. One area I personally is more interested is what it does to a ventricular remodeling. This is a very important place of managing a heart failure. If you are able to allow good blockage of this ventricular remodeling, then you are going to achieve very good results in cardiovascular death, because this is one of the very common reason why the patients develop arrhythmias. We know arrhythmias will ultimately end up in a sudden cardiac death, progression of heart failure. So any drug which has an effect on stopping this ventricular remodeling will have a wonderful effect on overall cardiovascular mortality. So we have seen, now we have data coming from ARNI. It has a beneficial effect on cardiac remodeling. It has been well demonstrated in multiple studies. Close to 660 patients over a period of 3 months, there was significant improvement in the LV and diastolic and end-systolic volume with increase in ejection fraction. We have seen in our clinical practice also this. It's not only from the data from trials. Now we see in our clinical practice also the patients having a benefit on ventricular remodeling side with reduction in volumes with increasing ejection fraction. So if you look at the studies, the 4 studies, there was close to 5% improvement in ejection fraction across these 4 studies. We know very well, anybody who is maintaining or managing patients with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, any minimal increase in ejection fraction and drop in volumes have a significant effect on patients' quality of life. Maybe an improvement of only 5% of ejection fraction, but there will be a close to 2 class benefits. A patient who was in class 4 becoming class 2 is a significant improvement in the quality of life. Forget about class 2 improvement. If you are able to bring a class 4 patient into a class 3, that itself gives an excellent quality of life to the patient. So in this study, there was around 7 out of 10 patients with heart failure with ejection fraction have showed increase in ejection fraction. So RNA treatment increased ejection fraction over a period of 6 months, were already receiving an optimal medical treatment. And there was a significant drop in left ventricular end diastolic volumes and diameters, which is very important. There was a significant drop in left end diastolic volumes and end systolic volumes in a significant range. You can see a significant drop, close to 5% drop in the volumes, which benefited the patient by decreasing their heart failure symptoms. So if you look at end systolic volumes, close to 2.64 millimeter decrease, which was statistically significant. So the volumes which were 65 plus have dropped to 63 plus. So there's a significant improvement in volumes. So other one I'll just touch upon. I'm not going into detail considering the time. The other thing which we do in a lot of patients with heart failure is a CRT, where we put 3 leads inside the heart and connect with a device and optimize the cardiac function. We know very well there are indication exists for CRT in patients who have the reduced ejection fraction, who have a wider QRS. Any patient with a left bundle wide QRS with the LV ejection fraction less than 30%, there's a class 1 for a CRT and they do extremely well. CRT basically increases heart's efficiency. There are a lot of data available. There is significant drop in left atrial size and mitral regurgitation by CRT. As I already told you, when you are following up with your heart failure patients, in echo, you are going to follow only few parameters. Look at left atrial size, look at mitral regurgitation severity, look at end diastolic and systolic volumes, and look at ejection fraction. These are the 5 things you have to follow in a patient with heart failure. If you are able to achieve a drop in any of this volume, you are doing well. If the volumes are increasing, then ventricular remodeling is happening and you are going to have a worsening heart failure in a time to come. So CRT not only works in a long way, it also has an acute effects. The patients who have a CRT have a drop in left ventricular and diastolic pressures, ultimately leading to improvement in the symptoms. So LV remodeling, I already shown you what happens with drugs. And CRT, we know very well, we have a significant data from large multi-center randomized controlled trials, which have shown wonderful effect on ventricular remodeling. I have few of my patients, I was thinking about sharing. There are few of my patients who have done an X-ray before CRT and after CRT. You will see that heart has shrunken in size. There are sometimes the leads which I have put in would have got an extra loops because heart have decreased in size. The heart which was looking 65-ish, 65 kind of a diameter would have dropped to 45-50 kind of a diameter. If the patient has a significant drop in volumes, then they are going to do extremely well. So these are the patients, sometimes we call them hyper responders. Close to 10 to 20% of the patients who are eligible for CRT can become a hyper responders. Whenever you are able to stop ventricular remodeling, either by the way of drugs or devices, the patient do extremely well. So whenever you have a patient who have a LV dysfunction, secondary to heart failure with reduced ejection fraction, you have to optimize the drugs. You have drugs, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, ARB, and now ARNI. Add them and optimize the drugs in such a way that you are able to achieve a good ventricular remodeling. And if you are not able to achieve ventricular remodeling adequately by these drugs, then you may have to assess the patient for need for the devices. And if patient is eligible for the devices, you can offer them devices which can stop this ventricular remodeling and reduce increasing dilatation of left ventricle and can bring significant improvement in the patient functional class, functional capacity, and better quality of life. Then they can decrease the mitral regurgitation volume and they can improve the ejection fraction. So with this, I'll finish my first talk. Next one is again on heart failure. It's a new addition. I'll just touch upon hardly 5 to 10 slides. I hope I have time. Yeah. Rachna, I have time, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, prompt me if I'm crossing my time. Thank you.
7 minutes, sir. You can go ahead if you want.
Yeah, thank you. So if you look at prevalence of heart failure in India, there are around close to 8 million patients who are living with heart failure in India. It accounts for about 1% of adult population. And unfortunately, in spite of all the advances I told you, I told you about we have so many drugs available and so many drug options available and we have devices, still heart failure has a post-admission mortality in the range of 20 to 30% in India. So medication adherence is a real issue in India. Close to 25 to 50% of the patients are not adherent to the drugs, and prevalence of heart failure is much younger in Indian population, and they are much sicker. The incidence of diabetes and heart failure in Trivandrum Heart Failure Registry was around 55%. So close to 50% of your heart failure patients are diabetic. So we know this. There are most important drugs you are going to add in a heart failure management is vasodilators. Now you have an ARNI, neprilysin inhibitor also. So with this, we have new addition of a newer drug, which has been recently introduced, which has shown a lot of promise in managing patients with heart failure. So one of the prototype trial, and if you ask, other than Paradigm in the recent time for an ARNI, the one trial which has really managed to change the way we are thinking about managing heart failure is a DAPA-HF trial. It was looking at SGLT inhibitor, dapagliflozin, 10 mg once a daily, added in a patients who are already on optimal management of heart failure with or without diabetes mellitus. This is very important. See, in this trial, there are two trials we have seen in recent times. One is a Paradigm for ARNI, and another is a DAPA heart failure for dapagliflozin, which has tested a new medication over and above optimally managed medical treatment for heart failure. This is very important because you are putting on a new drug on a patient who is already optimally treated with heart failure. The number of patients who are on beta blockers, ACE inhibitor, ARBs were optimal in this both placebo control group and the DAPA group. Close to 90% of the patients who are on this drug were optimally treated with beta blockers, ACE, and good number of patients were on ARNI also. And there are close to 7 to 10% of the patients who are on CRT also. So you are looking at a new drug to be tested on patients who already have been optimally treated. We have to keep in this back of our mind when we are going to look at the results. You look at the results. This was extremely good. The primary composite outcome, the cardiovascular death, heart failure hospitalization, or urgent heart failure was significantly reduced. You look at the p-value. P is 0.0001. So extremely statistically significant. It was a significant drop in primary composite endpoint. You divide the endpoints, worsening heart failure, again significantly dropped. Look at the p-values in all these numbers. P is 0.0003. And any cardiovascular event, you look at the first and repeat hospitalization, a significant drop. The significant drop in quality of life index. They looked at quality of life index in most of these patients. The change from baseline was in 6 months, it was significant. You can look at the p-value again here. P is less than 0.001. So compared with placebo, your change is nearly double in DAPA group. Placebo is 3.3, while in DAPA group it's 6.1. All-cause death, a significant drop. So whenever you have a new drug which has been introduced, which are showing excellent results in management of heart failure, you always have to look at the safety also. So if you look at the safety, dapagliflozin has shown extremely safe when it's compared to the placebo group. Hardly few things except a genital infection and urinary tract infection. Other than that, it was well tolerated drug in both diabetic and non-diabetic group. One thing we always look at SGLT inhibitors with little bit of suspicion is in a patient with a non-diabetic group. But you see, the benefit is seen irrespective of diabetes status. So cardiovascular death, heart failure hospitalization, urgent heart failure visits were significantly reduced in patients with both diabetes and non-diabetic. It was nearly same. It was hardly any difference between patients who are diabetes and who are not having diabetes. Other way around, if you look at the Trivandrum Heart Failure Registry, close to 50% of the patients were having diabetes. So this is going to anyway work in patients with heart failure and diabetes, and patients without diabetes also. It has a significant reduction in all the primary composite endpoints. So more importantly, whenever you look at drug for heart failure, the other thing you are very much interested is to look at how it behaves with your renal function. So you always require a drug which is renal wise neutral. You don't want a drug which is going to decrease the renal function, but you have a bonus here. Your drug, dapagliflozin, is able to reduce 45% reduction in incidence of acute kidney injury. So you have a drug now which is good for management of heart failure. Along with that, you have a significant reduction in acute kidney injury. We know a lot of patients with end-stage heart failure or very advanced heart failure have a significant renal dysfunction. So in these group of patients, this drug can do wonders in managing both together. So if you look at composite endpoints compared with DAPA and EMPA, DAPA has shown extremely well, but I would not say that it's a head-to-head trial. We are comparing with the EMPA heart failure trial with the DAPA heart failure trial. The patient subgroups are a little different. So I will not, at present, I will not say that one is better than other. But I think what we can say is DAPA has shown extremely good results in DAPA heart failure trial. So by this, let me summarize. Dapagliflozin has reduced risk of worsening of heart failure and cardiovascular death and improved symptoms in patients with heart failure with reduced ejection fraction when added to all the standard therapy. The relative and absolute risk of reduction in death and hospitalization were substantial, clinically important, and consistent among important subgroups. Dapagliflozin was well tolerated and rate of discontinuation was very low. So ultimately, we are looking at a new drug in the management of heart failure. If you look at 3 drugs which have been recent times have been introduced for management of heart failure, one is ivabradine, which was tested in SHIFT trial, and ARNI, which was tested in a paradigm heart failure, and dapagliflozin in DAPA heart failure. Now we have 2 drugs which have done extremely well. One is ARNI in paradigm heart failure and DAPA in DAPA heart failure trial. So with this, I think we have added another pillar to the management of heart failure. Now you have ACE, ARBs, beta blockers, melanocorticoid receptor antagonist, ARNI. Along with that, you have added another pillar in the form of dapagliflozin. I think our management of heart failure is going to be much more different and much more easier, and we are going to have a lot of success in managing this worrisome disease, the heart failure. So this is what in 2016 Heart Failure Congress talked about heart failure. So the great thing in the world is not so much where we are standing right now, but in the direction we are moving. So I think in management of heart failure, we are moving in the right direction. We have added one more pillar, and if you optimize these drugs, in most of the patients with heart failure, they are going to do well. And if you are not able to succeed in managing these patients with medical management, obviously you have to look at option of adding devices to managing these patients. Thank you.